Neo Tokyo is about to explode.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here. Today I'm talking to you about Akira. So Akira or Akira, however you want to pronounce it, needs no introduction. This is a series that everybody knows and loves from the movie that dropped in '88. Awe-inspiring, very influential. You could still see bits and pieces from this series explored today. You know, I never saw this series as another one of those. I always knew about it, but I never wanted to check it out. And I think it's because at the time I was very heavy into the shonen and I didn't want to really dive into the seinen world yet. Eventually, I was informed by Oscar that the movie's based off of manga and that the manga has so much more to offer. Because the movie came out in '88, if I'm not mistaken, and the manga ran from '82 to '90. So there was 2 whole years of content that the movie couldn't explore, unless, they talked to our mangaka here, Katsuhiro Otomo, for it, And I don't know yet because I haven't seen the movie, or we're going to be... So, man, let's just go ahead and get into it. Again, written and drawn by Katsuhiro Otomo, ran 82 to 90 in Young Magazine. It's a weekly series. And with 120 chapters, we've seen other work here like GTO, Prison School, Origin from Boichi. And to my surprise, 1, it was weekly, and 2, there was 120 chapters because the version I read was not that. It was actually the Western adaptation from Epic Comics that came out in, I believe, '88. And so that was published in issues, and they were roughly 60 to 70 pages each. There was 38 in total, so you could give or take between 4 to 6 chapters were condensed into 1 issue. And these were being released monthly. That means I was thinking that this was a different type of series. I didn't know it was weekly. That's very interesting. So my experience is a little bit different here. Aside from the binging, you can still get a grasp of the series and how it went depending on publication, right? So weekly, monthly, quarterly, etc. And also, because it was adapted in the West during the 80s and 90s, you read it left to right. And one nice surprise was this is all in color. Very fantastic. If you're going to ever read Akira, if you haven't, definitely check it out in color. It's nice. It's really good. I've seen some of the panels where it wasn't in color, and it reminds me of Desert Punk, to where there's not a whole lot of black being involved to replace color. So it's a lot of just line work, mainly. So let's get into this, man. Really enjoyed the series. It's good. You could definitely tell right away that this is going to be popular. It's going to be a big hit. And it's going to stand the test of time for a really good while. So it starts off here with our main characters, Kaneda and Tetsuo, roaming the city on their motorcycles with their gang in Neo Tokyo in the 2030s. After World War III, with a giant bomb blew up Tokyo and leaving a huge crater behind. You could definitely tell it's from the era based on the writing, the scenery, how our characters act, and that's really good. It's one of the strong points is definitely the writing here, the strongest point. The art's great, sure, but man, just the way Otomo writes our characters, their interactions, the relationships that are formed. There's no wasted effort here. Understanding that the movie, as far as I know, it covers majority of the series, you're going to have to trim a lot of fat, but the thing about the series is it's written in a way where there's really not a lot of fat. Unless you take out certain key points of the story, I don't know how else you would shorten it down into a 2-hour film. And yes, that's just, again, big props to the writing here. I really like it. When we get down to each character, when it's their time to shine for the story, it doesn't take a whole lot. It's not really in your face with exposition about their backstory and how they feel and what they're doing for the plot. Like with Kaneda, we don't really get a lot of his background. We just know he's this leader of this biker gang of a bunch of young adults. He's cocky. He's got a mouth on him. He could get into fights when he wants to. He could hold his own. Probably one of my favorite characters from the series, man. He's so great. And especially in the back half, shit's starting to hit the fan. We're reaching the climax of the series. He's really good. And especially when it comes to his relationship with our female lead, Kay. And she definitely has some strong points as well. When it's her turn to be the main character, it's really good. We also get, the other main characters, like Colonel Shikishima from the military side that's going on with this whole plot. And, he's the antagonist, but he's not a villain. He has a responsibility. He has to be in charge of Akira. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do. And just seeing him hold his ground, staying true to his morals and his resolve, it's really good. A lot of praising is going to be in this episode. And then even when it comes to the supporting characters that aren't very crucial to the story for about 90% of the time, there's still great writing involved. Like, for example, Chiyoko, one of Kei's friends, who I thought was just going to be a one-off character because they needed to hide at her place while they lay low from the cops and this other faction trying to hunt them down. And I thought, oh, that's the only time we're going to see her. But then she started stepping into the action, not a wasted moment with any of the characters that are given the time that they have. So how we kick off the story is with Kaneda leading his biker team with Tetsuo, who's his friend and sort of like his right-hand man, but they tend to butt heads because Tetsuo always tries to lead the group when they're riding on the bikes. And Kaneda's just like, what are you doing, man? You know I'm the leader. Right? And that's where his cockiness comes in, but it's honestly true. A lot of people like to look up to him, and you just feel like, oh, I want to be with this guy. This guy, can be reckless, but he knows what he's doing. He knows his morals. So they're in a restricted area, and, they're running away from the cops, and unfortunately Tetsuo is in the lead, and it's just wrong place, wrong time. Sees a kid in the middle of the road, is trying to swerve, ends up crashing, has to get taken to the hospital, but nobody can find him. He's not at any nearby hospital. They're getting a little worried. And then he shows up later out of nowhere, bandages and all, saying like, yeah, I went to one, don't worry. And that's where we go down this, I would say, tragic path with his character. Because by the time we get to the end of the series, he's the most dangerous character here. Everyone's out to kill him. And it's just really unfortunate for the character. Like, there's a lot of moments where you feel bad for him, and I think that's what's interesting, because he is the antagonist and can act like a villain sometimes. That's not how he's brought in. That's not who he was. And I think that's a good way to write your antagonist, because usually it's always the same, right? Your antagonist has always been an antagonist, and then we get the backstory of how he turned into that way before we even started the series of any particular manga. But here, we knew who he was as a character. Sure, he was a punk and he had a little bit of anger issues, but to think that he's going to threaten the world, that is a crazy turn of events for him. And just seeing everything build up, right? The tragic memories of his childhood, the sort of the envy he has, the jealousy towards Kaneda, the after effects of the drugs he's constantly taking to subdue the pain that's going on with his newly acquired powers, the confusion of what he's supposed to be here for, the pedestal he's put on, this mission that is his destiny, everything building up. He's spiraling out of control constantly. There are moments of levity for him when he can be somebody people look up to after like the very big moments in the first arc. And, that's good for him, but unfortunately the side effects kick him right back down to reality. And it's like, actually, this is where you are, so there's a lot of that going on with him. And I think that's a great balance of just seeing the downfall of his character and him slowly becoming a villain, but trying to hold on to who he is at the same time was really great, right? We get introduced to Kaori, who shows up into the series and sort of forms this special relationship with Tetsuo. And what I like about the writing, for the most part, is it stays consistent. For the most part, I say, which we'll touch later. But involving Tetsuo and Kaori, when they're not on screen, you know what's going on based on the few interactions we've seen here and there. And it's really good. It stays consistent. However, when it comes to the other side with Kaneda and Kei, yes, it stays very consistent, but my only thing is I really wish for their relationship we got a little more depth, because after Kaneda's sort of gone for a while in the series, and here's Kei trying to take the mantle essentially for what Kaneda was pushing with, which was, going after Tetsuo. She, reveals how she felt, and it's very typical of the time. You see it all the time in action movies out here during the 80s, early 90s, right? We have the hero and the heroine. They don't have the same ideals, always flustered, arguing. Sometimes the main character will do something that's actually respectable and a misjudge of character on the main heroine side, but then immediately he does something and, they go right back to square one. But there is still some respect. There is a little growth here between their relationship, but I just wish we got more of it, some more downtime. But I think that also notes that this type of story, there is no downtime for our heroes because there's so much going on. There's a lot to do. And, we're focusing only on really these two main characters and a few factions here and there. But, the weight of Japan is sort of on their shoulders. Heck, almost even the world of what their responsibilities are at the end. And that's more on Kei's side. She understands what's going on. But with Kaneda, he's a very simple character that is really likable. He can understand the situation. He can choose to ignore it. But when things are happening that involves people he cares about, that's not going to fly. I think, and that's what makes him a great leader and why people look up to him. Because as reckless and stuff as he can be, he understands what's important to him and to the people around him. There's a great interaction between him and Kei right before the big climax of the series. And it's very fitting for his character. It was really great writing, which I say is interesting because he, like I said, he has a mouth on him, so he's cursing left and right. And honestly, I wouldn't imagine it any other way that's more satisfying. And especially the way he comes back and, we finally get the long-awaited kiss between these two characters. It was satisfying to see, man. And then, I say I want more for their relationship to grow, but by the end of the series here, we see basically how they are together at the end once things have settled down, and I was okay for it. I wasn't disappointed or anything. I felt like, actually, yeah, that makes sense. And of course, it's Kaneda we're talking about, so his character is not going to give you any leeway to really show you his emotions unless things are really serious and he has to make a hard confirmation of it, right? Like during his conversation with Kei right before the climax, he, put his foot down and said how he feels, but it's not something that's like, oh my gosh, really? Like, can we talk about it? No, he's like, no, I'm saying this and I'm about to head out and go do my job. So that way you're not going to get hurt, and I think that's why I really like Kaneda as a character. My only other complaint here for the series is the series itself, the title, Akira. And, the buildup was about making sure he does not awaken. And once he does, and, does what he did to set in motion the rest of the series, that's pretty much it. He's on the sidelines because he just doesn't do a whole lot. He is a kid, and it says a lot. It says a lot about his character, but I kind of wish we just got something more out of him, right? Sure, we get exposition, we get an explanation of his past and why he is how he is and the way he acts. But there was really big moments with Tetsuo and with this other faction leader, Miyako, where I feel like Akira could have really shown who his character was, right? And I mean, that could be a thing to highlight for him, why it works well in the series, because we don't know who he is. We don't know how he's going to act. That's the surprise element with him. That's what keeps you engaged, is that what's Akira going to do? Is he even going to do anything? Because it's such a hot button thing for this character. If he does anything, it's very disastrous, right? That's how powerful he is. Having that suspense was good in the beginning, but you can only do it for so long. And once he actually started to do stuff, I was sort of left thinking, really? We couldn't go a little bit more? Because there's this question that is brought up eventually, and it's actually brought up to Tetsuo, and Miyako has seen this question, and she just can't give him the answer. But it seems that Akira has found the answer, or at least some version of it, and then eventually we get an explanation of it through the eyes of Kaneda. I feel like when you have a character that understands this existential thing that eventually the series is leading towards when it comes to these powers, you would think there's a good moment to have that character really say something meaningful for the series. But I guess because he is still a child and just doesn't have emotions, I guess you could say, either, that's what we're dealt with. Which is, again, it's fine, but it's just my complaint. You know, like, I really like depth in a story, but as long as it's not in your face, that's what makes it even better. And this series does not want to shove it in your face. So it's this balance that I just have to, you know, kind of accept, I guess. Other than that, again, yeah, the art's fantastic. Everything really pops. Otomo here likes to do the thing a few mangakas like to do, where the art will subtly change based on the importance or the tension in the scene. There's moments where close-ups of Kaneda fighting Tetsuo, and it's like really close shots of their faces, and the art is different. And even like more somber downtime scenes with Kaneda and Kei, the same applies there. It was a little jarring at first because I was just getting used to what the art was evolving into, which I really like when it came to him drawing the characters. Again, you know, not a lot of detail during this era for manga unless you're going super hard in the ink like Fist of the North Star and JoJo. But here it was the opposite, very light on the inking. But his expressions were fantastic. But then getting the close-ups and just the detail, I just didn't like it at first because it made the faces very roundish. And I just didn't know how I felt about that. But eventually get used to it at the end. And it doesn't happen that often. So, you know, you can give it a pass. But again, yeah, I recommend checking it out in color for sure. And other than that, I don't have much else to say for the series other than go check it out if you haven't already. It's a really good read. Finally glad that I got into the series, and I just wish I got into it a long time ago. Thanks for listening. You can go ahead and follow us on social media anywhere you go on Verse Podcast. We'll let you know when the latest episodes drop. And then you can email us on versepodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions or comments, what do you think of the series? Would love to talk about it on the next episode as always. So thanks, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.
Red motorcycle, take me where I wanna go. Cypher circle, capsule gang, stay on the road. Stop talking, little nigga, cause I gotta go. My pocket's swole, you could tell a nigga ballin', yo. You tryna take me out the streets and put me in the school. Just know a nigga breaking out of there if you do. You old heads think you tough cause you in a suit. I'm a young adult, nigga, I'm as big as you. I got the illest group, we gonna get rid of you. I'm sitting sipping Pinnacle while I'm switching to another lane. This city has just gone insane. We got them pills for your brain, you can numb the pain. Me and my gang are spazzing out on your battlegrounds. You niggas looking like a pack of clowns and hand-me-downs. We the toughest in the city, so get off of us. Neo Tokyo, we looking like Yakuza. We know the